So I have a koan this morning. a little context. There are two characters in this koan. Excuse me. One is Iron Grindstone Liu. And Iron Grindstone was a Zen nun who got that name because she was so formidable in Dharma combat. And any monk that thought they could kind of take her on there got ground up. So that's her. And in this dialogue, she's talking with Quishan. Quishan was her teacher. And she had a little cabin somewheres on the mountain where his monastery was. And so in this little koan, she's coming in to greet him. And you'll see in a moment the affection, the way that they talk with each other. So Iron Grindstone Liu arrived at Quishan. Quishan said, "Old cow, so you've come." The grindstone said, "Tomorrow there's a great communal feast on Taishan. Are you going to go, teacher?" Quishan relaxed his body and lay down. The grindstone immediately left. There's a great communal feast on Taishan. Are you going to go? No, tomorrow there's a great communal feast, teacher. Are you going to go, teacher? Quishan relaxed his body and lay down. The grindstone immediately left. Now, one other bit of context is that Taishan, the place where the iron grindstone is suggesting that this feast is taking place, is 600 miles away. So there's obviously no possibility of Quishan going to this feast. So why is she asking him this question? And why is he responding in the somewhat enigmatic way of just relaxing and lying down? Poof. That's his response. And incidentally, there's one commentary on this I came across years ago, and I don't even remember where, that suggests that he actually died at that moment. I don't know if that's true or not. It's not in this version of the koan or in the commentary, but certainly possible, and would be sort of consistent with the point of this koan as I see it. So what is Quishan pointing to, do you think? What is he pointing to? I think that he's very simply pointing to right here, right now. Right here, right now. Not tomorrow, not 600 miles away. Right here, right now. This is one of the central points of Zen. It encourages us to live our lives right here, right now. Now, you may say, "Whoa, that sounds like mindfulness." And while it's similar to mindfulness, it's not the same idea. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. I have a couple of disagreements with mindfulness as a thing, as a practice. And the first thing I think is just that somehow mindfulness sanctifies the present moment. It makes it special. I'm right here, you know. There's nothing sacred about the present moment. There's nothing special about the present moment beyond the fact that it is the only moment that there is. It is the moment that we live in. It is the moment that we do everything from birth to death in. It is the moment of the Big Bang, and it is the moment of the end of the universe. Although I guess now they're questioning that. But anyway. So it is absolutely not special. And we don't give out merit badges for being in the moment. The second problem that I have with mindfulness is that it, to use a Buddhist expression, it adds a head upon a head. It encourages us to see ourselves being present. And that adds a layer that Zen would say doesn't belong there. Be in the moment, be fully in the moment. Don't be watching ourselves in the moment, taking notice of it. That's a level of detachment. That's a level of separation. If there's going to be true intimacy, true non-separation, then our immersion needs to be complete and not stepping back and watching ourselves. So I think that's an important distinction between mindfulness as it's frequently discussed and the kind of presence that I think Iron Grindstone and Quishan are pointing to. Right here, right now. Now, one of the interesting things is then when we are here and now, all of our delusions and attachments disappear because all of our delusions and attachments live somewhere else in a different moment, in a future or a past that doesn't exist. We can see this particularly with our attachments, the things that we cling to, the things that we want, the things that we're drawn to. They're not here and now. They're not in this very moment. They're things that we project into the future, desires. I would like to have that. I want that. I need that. I want to go to the festival tomorrow. Right? All of our attachments live in something other than this moment. All of our fears, live somewhere other than in this moment. When we're just in this moment, so much falls away. So much falls away, and so much therefore comes into focus. We're far less distracted or distractible. Well, how do we do that? How do we practice and live that? We just do it. We go out to the end of the diving board and jump in each moment of our lives. We allow ourselves to be fully immersed in whatever is going on, whatever we are in the midst of. And we let go of things in the past and things in the future and things that are other places that draw us out of or distract us from our involvement in this very moment, in this very place, in this very life. Now, again, the process for doing that is simple. Letting go. The same as when we start our most basic breath counting practice and thoughts arise and we let them go. That's why, even though that's sort of the beginning practice and it's simple, it is also so profound. It is really doing the work of the Dharma right out of the gate, letting go. If we had 2 words only to describe Zen, those would be my choice of the 2 words: let go. Whatever we're clinging to, whatever we're running from, let go. When we think we've said something brilliant, let go. When we think we've said something stupid, let go. Whatever it is, when we're projecting in the future, right now, many terrible things live in those future projections. And none of them exists in this moment. This moment is pregnant with all possibilities. All possibilities exist right here, right now. Sure, there are probabilities, there are likely outcomes, but in fact, all possibilities exist right here and right now. And when we see that, and when we're able to live that, that's tremendous, gives us tremendous power over our lives. That's, in a sense, freedom. Freedom to not be tossed around and held captive by our fantasies, by our desires, by our needs, by our wants, by our fears. The things that haunt our days increasingly. None of that exists right now. Only this. So as this is when we talk about sort of making our lives into practice and making our practice into our lives, every moment of the day, we can practice letting go when we become aware that we're becoming attached, that we're becoming fearful, that we're clinging to something, that we're pushing something away, that we want to be other than right here, right now, doing exactly what we are doing, being exactly what we are being. You all know that the sort of famous and pretty much cliched Zen, expression, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, right? No matter. chop wood, carry water is an expression of living right now, living fully, you know. And Zen would say we don't half-ass chop wood. We don't half-ass carry water. We do it with our whole body and mind. Whatever it is, our whole body and mind, we put ourselves in, we invest ourselves in life, we invest in the world. Since we don't have a self, we're not investing very much, are we? So we're living wholeheartedly, not having sort of a lukewarm existence. And not missing out, you know, that. So the mindfulness people sort of talk about missing out, but in one sense, it's hard. You can't miss your life. Impossible. It's impossible to miss your life. Anybody tells you that, laugh. You can't miss it. You might be paying attention to distractions. You might be indulging in fantasies, but you're not missing your life. Then your life is distractions and fantasies. You can't miss it. But the question is, are you showing up for what you want to show up for? You know, are you engaging with the world that you want to engage with it? These things are so clever, so pernicious. You know, I'm on Facebook for a variety of reasons, including, among other things, I'm like promoting my book and I'm networking and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes, and I'm also connecting with, there's friends and people that I only see that way. And kind of being a little isolated up here in central Maine, it's nice to be able to connect with friends. But it's a quagmire. It's so well designed to capture my attention and hold my attention and take me down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I suddenly look at my watch and, oh my God, an hour has gone by. I've done absolutely nothing but click on these things, right? This is the world that we're in. It's designed to distract us. Designed to distract us. And if you happen to have attention deficit like I do, it's a very easy job. You know, and I frankly, I mean, you know, a little entertainment, a little distraction, as far as I'm concerned, is not a bad thing. But it can, these distractions can literally suck the energy out of us, the life out of us, you know. People spending hours or entire days down electronic rabbit holes, being just one form of distraction. So where we put our energy, where we put our life is really important. How we use, right? Mary Oliver, this one wild and precious life. Is a vital question that we all can be answering every single day. How will I use this one wild and precious life today? I think that becomes more acutely clear to those of us who are, I'll use a polite term, graying, and recognizing the finitude of our lives. We don't have forever, you know, and therefore each moment is more important. When we're young, we can overlook that a little more easily. It's like, we got a lot of time. Well, as old people said to me, and then I will pass along, it goes really fast. So our time is a great gift, a great opportunity. Our life is a great gift, a great opportunity. And we can spend it chasing shadows, or we can spend it living. We can use it well. And by the way, the end of this koan is Kushan relaxes and lays down. That's another form of chopping wood and carrying water. That's another part of living. It doesn't say, oh, we got to work every minute of our lives. But whatever we do, even if it's relaxation, make it deliberate, put ourselves into it, really do it. Personally, I do more multitasking than I should. And sometimes multitasking is a necessity. And sometimes it's just an indulgence. But the chances are that when we're multitasking, we're not doing anything really well. We're not really giving a good quality of attention to what we're doing. We're kind of plugging holes, right? Plugging holes. What's that? There's a game, a kid's game, where the little, I don't know what they are, gophers pop up in you. Whack-a-mole. Oh, they're moles. That's whack-a-mole. You whack them with a mallet, And so often our lives become this little game of whack-a-mole. Things are popping up all over the place. And when we're doing that, it's very hard. It's very hard to be fully present and fully engaged. Sometimes it's unavoidable. There's so many crazy distractions. While I'm sitting here talking to you, things pop up on my screen. Not things that I'm asking for, not things that I really have any interest in whatsoever. But Microsoft thinks I need to be aware of them. And Google thinks I need to be aware of them. So they pop them up on my screen. Ah, there's one. Dozens trapped in gondola. Literally that moment, it just popped up on my screen. AccuWeather is telling me about a technical problem on a gondola lift thing in Ecuador. And I really appreciate that, because that was essential knowledge right at that moment as I'm talking to you all here. But this is a crazy world, isn't it? Crazy. You're in a cabin in the woods. I'm hearing about this gondola in Ecuador while trying to give a talk to some pretty hopeless Zen students. You're laughing. It's not a joke. Anyway. So I'm going to just close with encouraging us all. Invest in life. Live life as fully as you can in this moment. Those desires, those distractions, those are the things that's killing the earth. Right? In this moment, we lack nothing. We don't need a new widget. a new whatever to make our life complete. Our life is complete in the moment. It is perfect in the moment, regardless of what's happening. And that's the other thing. These distraction things are not accidents. They're people who are trying to sell us things, as bizarre as that is. Maybe others of you who are getting on in years have this experience. So they send me, they being, I don't know, whoever's out there, every day, descriptions of dozens of diseases that I never heard of. Because as a senior, they want to keep me focused on illness, and they want to keep me fearful because that sells whatever the product is that they're pushing, whatever the medication is that they're pushing. And they want me to go to my doctor and say, "Doctor, please give me this medication." Even if there's nothing wrong with me, right? Crazy distractions constantly. So we got to come back. We got to let go. We got to practice every minute of our lives. Thank you.
Peter, when we are distracted by serious things, serious illness, serious tragedy going on, serious need to come up with an idea. Maybe that last one's not a good example, but the other two. How does one get away from that distraction when it's really, really tough?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, at some point, that distraction might be the thing we should be focusing on, right? I mean, if I'm here talking to all of you, there's somebody in my yard bleeding. They're not a distraction. They need my, they need to take priority. I need to shift my attention. So I think that's the other side here is we kind of have to know, where our priorities should be. But if it's not something, then we do our best to let it go. Or sometimes it's so persistent and it's so much work to not pay attention that it's easier to pay attention. This is not a perfect thing. We try and we do our best. That pop-up distracted me. Fortunately it was minor and momentary, but there are things that are not minor and momentary, and then maybe we go with them.
I can relate to what you said about working really hard to let go.
Well, go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, just that, I can understand that's not right, but I find myself getting into that circle.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much working hard as it's needing to be repetitious, right? Sometimes we let go, it comes back. We let go, it comes back. Letting go is a very imperfect process. And sometimes it takes many iterations, and sometimes it fails altogether.
And
I know if I'm.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry. Sometimes maybe we have to just let things be.
Yeah. Got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. As Roshi Rogers said.
I was going to say too that in moments of illness and death and stuff like that, the bigger things. Um, it's important to be in those moments and not run away and just, as you said, you just be with it. It's unpleasant as that may be, but it too shall pass, and we all learn things from going through it. So you do want to be in that moment as much as your ego makes you think you really don't want to be, but it's good for you, you know?
Well, yes, whether it's good for you or not, it's part of life, right? We can't, if we try to reject life, we reject sort of all of life. We've got to embrace all of life. There's parts we do not like, we are uncomfortable with, they are difficult, and Zen tells us, you don't get to pick and choose that way. You get, right this morning, there's a discussion on the White Plum teachers have a email serve thingy dingy, and the discussion this morning is about grief. One of the teachers is looking for a way to help somebody who's grieving, and I didn't even have time to kind of get into it or look at it, or even know what they're talking about, but it seems to me that's wonderful grief. Let's talk about grief. Let's grieve when it's the right time and when it's needed, let's shed the tears and let's laugh, really laugh from our bellies when laughter is called for, so it's being appropriate also to where we are, to what's going on, being appropriate. And, it's this kind of this sort of myth that Zen is going to make us detached. And it's the exact opposite. Zen is going to engage us deeply in feeling the feelings and expressing the feelings and being there. And then where the change happens is, and then moving on, not clinging, not staying stuck. Right. And those who are therapists among us, I hope would agree with this, that when you're helping somebody with grief, what you teach them to do is to grieve, not to avoid it. The only way through grief is through grief, right? It's the only way through it is to experience the feelings, to cry the tears. In my work, every once in a while, I've had people come to me and say, I just can't get over the loss of my mother, every day I'm crying. And, I was like, oh, when did your mom pass? Oh, 10 years ago. Okay. So what's wrong with this picture? That person hasn't successfully grieved. They haven't been able to go through it. It's a fire. And the only way to put the fire out is to go through it. And that's something that Zen reminds us of.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and talk about, I think that oftentimes people who aren't in the moment, or who don't maybe adequately go through the feelings, they can oftentimes sort of devolve into a state of avoidance, which is also, of course, incredibly maladaptive and incredibly pervasive. I'm thinking of just before I was on vacation, I was working with someone going through a divorce who's just, sort of lamenting that they're angry and they're sad and all the feelings that are very natural and going with a divorce. And then there's that sort of secondary judgment layer of like, I wish I want to be over it. I want to be through it. I want to, and it's like, well, you're going through a divorce. I think now's the appropriate time to be angry and to be scared and to be sad. And you can either accept it or not. But I would err on the side of accepting your feelings, so you don't get into a state of avoidance where where bad stuff grows.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yeah, we talk sometimes about spiritual bypassing. That's one sort of form of spiritual bypassing, right? I'm a Buddhist, and therefore I'm not feeling pain. I'm not sad. I'm not depressed. We can suppress those things. We can pretend that they don't exist. But ultimately they come and bite us in the butt. You can't. It's an illusion that we can bypass, right?
We'll say though, it is a lot of folks that I work with, knowing that I am involved in this practice, will ask questions, and then they'll say things like, well, I really don't want to be a robot. I don't want to live my life, as a sort of emotionless robot. So that does seem to be a very common misconception about what we're doing. I try to disabuse people of that, but I think I fail. But the struggle continues.
I don't understand why they would think that about Zen.
That's my usual response.
It's the exact opposite. That's what people don't understand. We're not bypassing our emotions. We're diving into them. We're living them fully and feeling the pain. None of us likes feeling pain. None of us likes being sick. It's hard. One of the things that my teachers were Steph and Margaret Barragato, and people who've come more recently don't know this history, but Steph had what was it called, pulmonary fibrosis, and was a process of dying that lasted 4 years, in which he was steadily more and more and more declining, and I don't want to get too far off into that, but interesting. One of the things he said, that for him, the worst part of being ill was it made him focus on himself. He didn't want to be preoccupied with himself. He didn't want to be preoccupied with his illness. And yet there are times, right? When when you have the flu and you've got 103 fever, you're probably not going to be thinking about the daisies outside. You're going to be thinking about how your body aches and your head aches and you blah, blah, blah. When did you take your last medication? So there's a time for being distracted also.
There's a koan that addresses the exact thing that Robert was just talking about, which I may use as my Shuso Hosen talk koan, but it just seems so appropriate that it seems like it might be worth sharing right now. So there was this person, a woman, Sul, who her mind was always perfectly clear, and she studied Zen from a very early age, and she became known as a great Zen master. And she became a grandmother, and she had a whole family of Buddhists who were thriving. It was a very happy family. And one day her granddaughter died, and she was extremely distraught. She was bitterly crying at the funeral and after the funeral. And the people in the town were shocked. And they went to her and said, you're a great Zen master. Why is your mind not clear? And why are you attached to what happened? Why can't you let it go? And she said she immediately stopped crying, and she said, "Don't you understand that my tears are more important than all the sutras and all the rituals and all the things you do in Zen that are external?" Um, and then she said loudly, "Do you understand?" And no one understood. And that's the end of the koan.
Hey Gary, this is Jim. I appreciate you sharing that because in March, my youngest son was hospitalized at Children's Hospital. He was there for a month, and at first we thought it was a life-threatening illness. It was life-threatening at the beginning, but he ended up having his first bout with Crohn's disease, and he couldn't eat, literally could not eat any solid food for 2.5 weeks. So everything was IV fluids, and it was quite an extraordinarily difficult experience for him. But where I'm going with it is that I've been very open with two of my best friends from college, you know, how I've been studying Zen Buddhism and trying to learn more about it. And during that experience, and I'm a very passionate person, as you guys will get to know me, very passionate, demonstrative. My buddy Chris said to me, "Well, your Zen Buddhism doesn't seem to be working too well for you right now." Is what he said. Because all the emotions were at the surface, obviously. But I can honestly say that as I went through that experience, if I didn't have Zen, I don't know how I would have gotten through it, because I don't know how to put this into words, but I feel like the practice allowed me to have an awareness. I know you don't like the word mindfulness, Peter, but maybe it's more awareness. Not that you don't like the word, but you had problems with it. And I do too. I think the awareness of the experience allowed me to know where my feelings were coming from. Right. And that was extraordinarily important for me. Not that the feelings weren't there, they weren't important. I tried to push them away, but knowing where they arose from was such an extraordinary, it gave me such the extraordinary ability to get through it. And it's given me the ability to get through it now, because really the whole journey of his Crohn's illness is not over. So I appreciate you sharing that story, that koan, because I think it speaks to what I just went through over the last several months. So I appreciate you tying that in.
And Jim, thank you for sharing that.